Welcome to the Tabletop Gaming Guild show. Tabletop Gaming Guild is all about the memories and experiences playing tabletop games with friends and family can create. On this very special episode, we are going to be interviewing a designer of the game City of Myrkesh, which is now on Kickstarter. At the time of this recording, you're going to have about 18 days left to check this game out and back it, so I'm going to highly recommend going to check that out. Definitely listen to the rest of this episode, and I will put the link down in the description below.
My home, once a place where anyone could pursue their goals, barter their way to fortune, or fight for prestige, is being forever changed. Gather yourself and your friends to my City of Myrkesh, a 2 to 5 player strategic deck building game where players will use coin to recruit allies to their side from within the city. Be fast on your feet as you and your opponents can use any card as movement to obtain a better vantage point. Players will gain power in order to deal damage to the monster and accrue prestige. This fearsome monstrosity will retaliate by viciously attacking the players, adding wound cards to their decks.
Other players may assist or disrupt you from these goals.
But when the dust settles and the fight is over, whom from my city will stand tall with the most prestige?
Will it be the denizens of the Merchant's Row? Do you favor letting coin do the talking? Utilize their ability to gain an abundance of it, rush cards to the top of your deck, and even utilize other players to broaden your card selection. Who will you barter with? Perhaps the figures of the royal courts entice you. Do you value resource flexibility, gaining both coin and power to achieve your goals? Raise your levies, gain noble prestige, and protect yourself from disruption. How will you show your status?
The minds of the industrial grounds share one true motivation: progress. Do you seek the same? Draw cards better than any other district and use cards that have multiple options when played. Will innovation guide your hand?
Do the creatures of the wild speak to you? Will you strive for raw power? No matter how primal it may be, nothing, not wounds nor destroyed terrain, shall halt your ferocity. Will the forces of nature be at your command?
Do you see eye to eye with the populace of the Undercity? Are you fast on your feet? Do you take what you want, slander your opponents, cause their allies to revolt against them, and slash them down before they even get a chance to react? Take back your city, one cut at a time.
Whomever you align with, the unforgiving city will welcome you. Will you seek to have the most allies? Take on the monster before your opponents can? Or will you use the resources you've obtained to spread your influence over the city and those within it? In the City of Myrkesh, prestige is yours for the taking.
So, the City of Myrkesh, if I'm saying this right, is a 2 to 5 player game that is a strategy deck building game with a unique city transversal mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
So, butchered that word there, but whatever. So, without further ado here, Mark, if you want to give a little overview of the game, and then we can get into it.
Fantastic, yeah. City of Myrkesh is a take on a deck building game that I had seen some repeating patterns in deck building games like Star Realms or Ascension or Dominion, where inside of this market of 5 to 6 cards, 5 of your Star Realms, you're sometimes limited on what strategies you can play. If you like strategy A and only strategy B and C are on the board, you're limited to only B and C. You're not able to fully express your play style. So that was one of the 2 questions I actually wanted to solve with my game, was how do I make every strategy available at all times? And how do I remove the side market? So the first solution was on my board. The reason I call it a city traversal game is you have a player piece that's going to move around these 10 spaces around this board. And depending on what space you're on, it will allow you to perform certain actions or buy certain cards. And within the city, it's divided into 5 districts, and each of these districts has a play style for their method to victory. So depending on what strategy you like to play, you can go into either Merchant's Row, or Wilds, or Royal Courts, or Industrial Grounds, or even Undercity. And you can mix and match these strategies. Some pair better than others, some kind of go against each other. And it's just your job as the player to find out what strategy you enjoy playing and how you're going to maximize the efficiency of every turn to achieve victory.
Yeah, that's really cool. The other thing I really liked about the game, so you have that pawn that you move around, but there's a monster in the middle. And you're also fighting that monster throughout the game too. So you're deck building and you're trying to use these cards in a multi-purpose manner. So I really love multi-purposing cards. So you can put it down and I guess not tap it, but turn it sideways, and you can move around the city so you can collect your cards. You could use it as combat power to attack the big bad, or you can use it as money to purchase new cards. And I believe all the cards also have effects too that can take place and do different things, right?
Yes. So your goal in the game is depending on how many players there are. So in a 3-player game, for example, there will be 36 prestige or victory points that I just call it prestige in the game. And your goal is to get this prestige pool to 0. That's representing the monster's health. Players will continue attacking the monster in different locations of the city and dealing it damage. If you have 4 power, you gain 4 victory points. Some things alter that, but it's usually a straight conversion. And once the victory pool is empty, the play will continue for until everyone has an equal amount of turns. And then you're going to add up all of your prestige you have. If you're playing Royal Courts, and you might get some noble prestige, which I'll explain in later. And all the cards you buy have a end of game point value, and you'll add those together, and whoever has the highest total wins the game.
That's pretty cool. And then you start out with 10 starter cards. Each buddy does. And what you draw 5 to start?
Yeah, it's a deck of 10 cards. There's 4 different types of starter cards. You got your traders that just generate a coin. Soldiers generate you a power.
Okay.
You have 2 nomads, which are whatever are modal cards, which they'll give you an option when you play them. You can either get a coin or you can get a power. And then you have a peasant. Peasants don't do anything. Their text box is completely blank, but what they do is they teach a mechanic. When you're playing the game, if you want to get any movement or move across the board, you have to play either a card vertically, which will just resolve the card normally. But if you play it sideways, you'll disregard all the card's text and it'll just say gain a speed. So the peasant doesn't do anything, so you just play it sideways instead, and it'll get you speed. You can do that with any card in your deck.
Yeah, and that's cool that you can have that. Says your speed card on there, and there's probably ones that you'd want to. Can you shed cards in the game? Because I really like doing that.
I love removing cards. The starting cards that you start the game with aren't the best.
Yeah.
And certain districts go do that better than others. Would you mind if I went into a slight explainer of each one?
Yeah, go for it.
Sweet. So I'll start in Merchant's Row. Merchant's Row is your generating coin district. If you want to generate a lot of money to get expensive cards when you see them in the city, if you want to get bonuses from buying cards in certain locations, if you want to, say, I don't know, rush cards to the top of your deck instead of your discard pile so you get to see them faster. And if you want to utilize your opponents and what they have access to instead of just yourself, because normally when you are buying cards, your player piece will dictate, it'll have arrows on the space that you're on and will show you what cards you're allowed to purchase. But Merchant's Row sometimes says, hey, that opponent over there, you can buy cards from their space.
Oh, cool.
So that's Merchant's Row. The opposite of Merchant's Row is the Wilds. They're all about generating as much power as possible. If you want to deal as much damage and aggro the monster early before your opponents can adapt a proper strategy, they are all about getting power. There are ways to not be able to attack the monster where rubble tokens get created. If the monster gets hurt enough, it starts destroying the city. The Wilds will let you ignore rubble, so you could just attack straight through it. And then they allow you to also mitigate the dead cards that you start getting. As you attack the monster, the monster deals you wound cards. They'll go in your discard pile, they'll just act as dead cards. Wilds let you cycle through those faster, so it keeps your engine efficient.
Go ahead.
The third district is Royal Courts. Royal Courts is a mix of the first two. They do some power, they do some coin. But they will do a little bit of controlling aspects. They like to pass out taxes to your opponents so they can't generate coin as efficiently. Maybe they'll tithe your opponent and force them to discard a card. They also protect themselves. They have the shield mechanic, which allows them to prevent one instance of disruption if somebody else is trying to slow you down. And Noble Prestige, I was going to talk about that. Royal Courts is the only district that in normal ways of getting victory points, you have to attack the monster. but Royal Courts has that nobility about them, so they can perform other actions that allow them to generate their own victory points. The last two districts will go into industrial grounds. I know there's some players out there who just like drawing cards constantly. So industrial grounds is your district. If you want to draw cards more efficiently than any other district, you can do that. If you want to have cards that are the most likely to have modal choices where you can choose A or B, depending on what situation you're in, there's a lot of those in industrial grounds. And then the last district, Undercity. The Undercity deck is all about generating speed. Every district, normally you have to play cards sideways to get speed, but Undercity cards will just generate that on their own. So you can be anywhere in the city you want if you want to be able to attack from a different position or buy a card across the city. They also allow you to steal points from your opponent, or excuse me, steal points from your opponents, or you can even steal cards from them. And you can also slow them down by giving them a slow status. So they have a little bit of controlling disruption about them. But that's all 5 districts, and depending on what playstyle you enjoy, you can mix and match. If you want to make an Undercity Merchants Row deck with a little bit of courts, or if you just want to go pure wilds and maybe a little industrial grounds. I've had some fun instances during playtesting where people have really optimized certain cards together.
That's really cool. One thing I wanted to swing back to is you said that the monster can attack the city. I know when you attack the monster, you get the wound cards, and those are like dead cards in your deck or whatever. But what happens when the monster attacks the city? So you didn't do anything, and the monster attacks the city because you didn't attack it enough. What happens?
So there's different damage effects depending on how much you deal. So we'll go from top to bottom. If you deal 4 or more damage, you've hit the monster hard enough where it can't hurt you back. So any negative effects like wounds, or maybe you have to discard something, or maybe you have to let someone else draw a card, you ignore those negative effects completely. If you deal 3 or more damage, you'll create rubble, which means there'll be a little token that gets placed in the district the attack originated from. I have to phrase it that way because sometimes you can attack from another player's space.
Okay.
So you'll put a rubble token in there, and while a district has rubble in it, 2 things can't happen. You can no longer attack from that district, as the opening's been completely damaged by debris. And any card you buy from that district requires an additional movement to purchase. So if you're buying a 2-cost card from that district, it's going to cost 2 coin and 1 speed. You're going to have to crawl over the rubble to recruit the allies that are in the damaged district. If you deal 2 or more damage, you're allowed to shuffle the district. It's called crowd retreat. You're able to take the cards in the district, shuffle them up, and then deal new cards out. Every district has a 16-card deck, and every single card in that deck is unique. So as the game is being set up, you're going to have 2 cards out of each district. So that's why you're also able to, go into any strategy you'd like. And then if you deal 1 or more damage, all that happens is if you pop it for 1, the monster is just going to rotate to face the threat from where the attack originated. So this monster has 5 different sides, and these sides are always going to be changing how it's being positioned within the city as you deal damage to it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So you have 16 cards in each deck. And those are set decks, or can you customize them in the future?
I would love to have them customized in the future. If you have a player or a group that prefers more like tricky politics, I might have more tricky politic cards that you can slide in there. Right now, it's just a base deck of 16. But if, I would love to have the popularity behind this project to warrant making expansions. I had to stop myself from designing cards to a certain point. Because the problem with my game, not that really the problem, but the thing I shot myself in the foot was I made all the cards unique. So every single card had to have a unique illustration. So I had to commission 11 artists over 8 months to make about 70, 75-ish illustrations. So the replayability on my game, I feel like is there because once you buy a card, that's yours. No one else has that specific card. And with all these cards enveloping around 47 different keywords, it leads to a really big and unique experience every time you play it.
Yeah, plus there's a lot of playtesting every time you make a card.
Oh yeah.
But I do like the art for the game a lot. So I was going to ask about that. That's a lot of investment in a game to have just beautiful art in it. So I'm really appreciative of that.
Thank you for acknowledging it. It was a lot of work.
Yeah, that's not a small amount of work. A lot of people just don't want to put that in, so they don't take the time. And you did, which is awesome. And it really shows in the game itself.
It's also a lot of work to balance that many different cards.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
oh, you have no idea. I had my playtesters, and I was very fortunate. I had a very good, consistent group of friends who, like every weekend or every other weekend, they'd come out and play tested for me, and I take notes every time. I would just like watch them play it and say, okay, this strategy is really strong. This strategy is too weak. I need to rebalance that. One district in particular was super hard to balance, and that was the card draw district. You know, because when you have a card that costs two and maybe draws you a card, and it's on a curve, you know, if you're really above the curve and you draw a card that's like the best card in your deck, that's super good value. If you draw the worst card in your deck, like a peasant, that's really below the curve. So you've got to try to keep it within that curve of power level to cost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that brings us up the questions like, how long have you actually been working on this game, and how much of that has been playtesting?
2.5 years. It's been since July of 2021.
Wow.
That's a good amount of time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, one of the other things I was looking at in the game is where, so you have the multi-purpose cards. So you could do the movement, you could do the purchasing, you could do the special effects, you could do all the different things from these cards. How did you get that, figure out that mechanism and like the balancing of the multi-purpose cards in that manner? Like the value you buy it for versus what you can use to generate money.
So I wanted each district to have like a mechanical identity behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So there was in each district, there was a what is this district good at? And then what is this district weak at? If I use an example like Merchant's Row, every card in the Merchant's Row deck will generate you coin in some way. Whether that's, hey, maybe I'm doing my opponent a favor and giving them a card, and I see that card's cost, and maybe I get extra money depending on how much it costs. Or, hey, I'm buying a card in the inner city or outer city. And if I buy an inner city card, I get extra resources, whether that's movement or power. The weakness of Merchant's Row is they don't have any disruption. So they don't know, they can't slow your opponents down if they're starting to steam ahead. The opposite is true for wilds. They can generate a ton of power, but they have a little bit of disruption when it comes to enrage, but they don't really generate coin by themselves. So if you're going to go into a wilds deck when you start the game, sometimes you got to realize that, hey, you might not be able to pick up that 4, 5, or 6 cost card, and your focus is going to be just attacking damage and getting raw victory points.
Yeah. Another thing, getting into like all those different guilds and all those different cards or city segments and all the different cards, is one of the things that I always I see there's several different mechanisms that go in deck builder games. You can have like a Dominion style, everything's available all the time. So you just have a market row that's stagnant.
The grandfather of all deck builders.
The grandfather of all deck builders. And then you can have Ascension, which is the first market row game where you have cards out, they come out and they're random and you pick from them and whatnot. And most other ones are based off of that. So you got like Star Realms, you got whatever, insert name of deck building game here. But one of the things I always found very frustrating in those games is when you're trying to develop a strategy that you didn't make your own deck like Magic or whatnot, you're building your deck, which is a lot of fun and really what attracts me to them. But what I didn't like was that sometimes it's extremely hard to build a strategy because the faction or whatever you're trying to do doesn't come up. So if you're trying to get in Star Realms, or if you're trying to get all the blob ship stuff going and get that synergy going for you, and they never come out, you will probably end up losing the game because you started off on the wrong foot. And I really
I've had that moment.
Yeah, that's the worst too. It's just like, I just need something. Guess I'll get this dumb blue ship that gives me health.
Trade Federation.
Trade Federation. So I really appreciate the fact that you have the ability to basically form your own destiny. So you can, in your game, you can go in, and if you want to just do Merchant Guild or you want to do the industrial group, you can. There's no thing blocking you.
Well, little small story. I was playtesting this game at a local cafe/board game shop, and I had some friends come from out of town. And my one friend had played the game for the first time, and she steamrolled the game. But the way she played it her first time was she started in the Undercity, and she had the perfect first hand. She was able to generate 5 money. Every single card in her hand was able to just generate a coin. So she bought a really impressive Undercity card and put it into her deck. And then the rest of the game, she just played Industrial Grounds and kept drawing or buying drawing cards that when she played
Yeah.
them, she would go through her cycle through her deck like crazy, draw that 1/5 cost card that was super powerful, and was able to consistently play it like every other turn.
Yeah, I see. I like strategies like that. That's my favorite way of doing things. Just be able to draw down, whittle down your deck, clean it up, and be able to consistently get to the point where you just have like a powerhouse card come out every single time. It's really fun. I like that a lot. But so with this game here, you have all your factions out. You have, or what? Sorry, they're not really called factions. They're called, what are they
You
called?
can call them factions.
So factions. What was your, I guess, inspiration for those factions and the different balances between them? Like, what was your basically what was your inspiration for the game, and then how'd you think of, hey, I would like to have this group with these powers and this group with this powers?
So being someone who was at a background in like TCGs,
Mm-hmm.
I really love that identity of like certain TCGs that had certain like I'm just going to reference Magic, for example, where they have the colors and every color
Yeah.
does something specific and every color has weaknesses. You can combine them together. And I wanted to take that mentality of like being able to customize your experience and build your deck with the cards you enjoy and bridge that with a deck building game. So if Magic and Ascension had a baby, what would that baby look like?
Yeah, that's a
And
good analogy of what I think the game looks like. So it's like a good deck builder with that nice Magic feel where you have all those different elements separately, but they all sort of play off each other in different ways.
yeah, and it was so fun designing. When I was getting the illustrations, I wanted to pay tribute to the playtesters who were getting this game to the way it was for like the last 2 years. So I put their likeness in some of the cards.
Oh, that's cool. I like when people do that. That's really cool.
Yeah, just a little. I have some family in there too, but just as a tribute to like the main group of playtesters, my one friend wanted to be a rabbit merchant in his artwork, so I made it happen.
Hey, that's really cool.
Yeah, thank you.
So I chose Edge of Darkness to put back here because I thought in many ways it sounded similar to what you're doing in that you can attack a monster as well as do your deck building. But like a lot of deck builders, the theme gets a little lost. But it seems like you put a lot more emphasis and thought into making sure the theme was still there. Is that right?
Yeah, so while designing the districts, I wanted to have a cohesive, like, what kind of characters are you going to see within each district? And I wanted that to be consistent. So, for example, like Undercity, Undercity is like your, what I call the flesh cult, or your revolutionaries, or your rogues, or your ghosts and ghouls. Uh, you're always going to see characters like that within the Undercity. If that's the sort of aesthetic you vibe with, then that's maybe the district you might enjoy playing. If you want to join the wilds is all about like shamans and savage folk and dryads or monster hunters. They've all got their own aesthetic to them. So whatever district you like the art direction behind could be the district that you express yourself with.
Yeah, it's really cool. So, like I said, the game's on Kickstarter. We need to check that out. But what we're going to talk about now is before the show, we were talking about Gen Con.
Yeah.
Your first episode of going to Gen Con. You want to talk about that a little bit? The first time, this is the first convention you ever went to, right?
Oh no, first board game convention.
First board game convention. Oh, there's no other type of conventions. Then
So I would go to Adepticon, which is like this tabletop miniatures convention.
Yeah, no, that's okay. You're forgiven. It's fine.
Oh, thank you,
Yes,
thank you.
You're welcome.
So before the podcast, I was talking about meeting my game design idol, which was actually Justin Gary. I follow his work. Most of my shelf is a lot of his games. So I've got like 2 rows on my shelf just full of different versions of Ascension. And he was kind of the driving force that inspired me to work on my own deck building game. So I've been buying his games. I always pre-ordered the boxes and got the promo cards whenever he came out with them. And me and him had a really good conversation during Gen Con and just really like trying to pick his brain of all the games he's come up with. And the fact that he's so humble to just work with somebody like Richard Garfield, even though he has all this stuff already existing behind him, it's like, you've still got someone you look up to, even if you're super successful.
Yeah, I will say real quick, used to be my favorite ugly deck building game, but they came out with a 10th edition, and does that look good? That looks amazing.
I remember the ugly art in the first set
Oh
too.
my gosh, it's so bad, but the game is
I
so fun. I was like, oh, this is hideous.
I like Eric Sabe. He's talented. And over the sets when he was illustrating for the
Yeah,
game, he got better. It was just like the introduction, like the first few sets, like Chronicle of the Godslayer being the
yeah,
original, and
the
then Storm of
giants.
Souls.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that game is amazing. It's just one of those things that always stuck at me. It was one of the earlier deck building games because I was really into Dominion
Hmm.
a lot. Like, I have so many cards. It's like completely unplayable now for the amount of cards I have. And then Ascension came out, and I was like, this is hideous. And then I played it, and I'm like, this is amazing, earth shattering. What the heck? I don't have to memorize the 16 cards I have out.
Right, they're all just new cards in the market, and you
Yeah.
just put a new one out when somebody buys or defeats one.
Yeah, it was amazing. But yeah, just that's my little aside. But so that was your first convention. Went there, met your idol. Did you have a booth there, or did you just hang around and do different things?
So I was part of the first exposure playtest hall, and that is an event where people can go and they can showcase their new game that they're working on, and they'll get you a group of people that people stand in line and get assigned a table, and then they play that game, and you get 2 hours to showcase your game to players. And then depending on how many players your game plays, you might want to have, I don't know, maybe a 3-player game or 4-player game, just so you can try to finish or at least show off most of the mechanics of your game within that 2-hour window. So I took 4 sessions. I took 2 on Friday and 2 on Saturday, and we play tested 4 times, and I got some fantastic feedback and thoughts about behind the game. And I'm like, hey, I'm gonna launch this on Kickstarter in October, 3 months from now. If you want to follow my work, here's a QR code. It links to the Kickstarter and links to the Facebook page. Just promoting the game itself is a whole other cup of tea.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Is if it was a valuable experience with the playtesting and the feedback? But it sounds like that was an amazing experience.
Mhm. Yeah,
Uh,
I've been balancing cards since I onboarded my second graphic designer, just making sure, hey, this is what a 2-cost card does. It's an average ability. This is what a 5 or 6 card cost does. It's really powerful and could alter the game.
yeah, and so yeah, there is a lot that goes into you didn't just design the game. You had to produce like the prototypes and
Mhm.
sell the game, and you had to tweak it as you went time went by. So that's a ton of work. And one of the things that I was always interested in is like, how did your time management work for that, where you're like, I need to get all these artists in here, I need to get this in there, then I need to get this and play tested over here, then I need to adjust these cards and redo that. That had to be incredibly stressful.
I'm fortunate that I work from home. So
Yeah,
as I'm
that's good.
working from home, I can message people on my different social platforms, whether that's like Discord or Twitter or Facebook. And all the artists I contacted and the communication methods we all had, I work from home. So I can just, oh, I'm doing my work. Oh, now I can message this person real quick, and I can have consistent communication with them. And, getting reference boards out to the designers of the illustrations and showing them like, hey, I want this character to look this way. Maybe they're in part mechanical. Here's some machinery references. And I built a reference board for every single illustration
Oh,
that this
that's
game
cool.
holds. Mhm.
That would also be time consuming too. For your initial playtesting, did you make physical prototypes, or did you leverage like Tabletop Simulator?
I would love to leverage Tabletop
I
Simulator.
hate Tabletop Simulator.
I don't have the patience to learn how to load the stuff into the game, but I've had somebody reach out and offer their services to load my game
Oh,
into it.
that's cool.
Yeah. It's just I gotta put the finances aside to pay him for it. So I wouldn't feel comfortable, just have them do it for free. It would be something to compensate him for. But as I was playtesting the game, what I would do was I had this Photoshop document full of all the cards. And back when I only had one artwork per district, just as like a flagship, just to have something for the players to look at
Hmm.
while they're playing. I would print these cards out for my home printer, stick a magic card in a sleeve, and then put
Yep,
my card
yep,
over it.
yep,
So you can
yep.
just play test it like that. And if you want to print a card update, that's as easy as just printing it out of your, printer.
Yeah, I used to do that. You just have the magic cards as the backer for the
Mhm.
yeah, it's a good idea. And a really nice way to make it like not super expensive to be able to make your playtesting models.
Yeah, I eventually I went through the game crafter for my
Mhm.
prototypes, and when I was like, I started using the game crafter way too early. If I could tell myself,
Yeah.
keep playtesting. I wanted to see official cards with a fancy back, so I ended up getting a few prototypes through them. But the amount of prototypes I probably got like 4 or 5 until I was
Yeah.
like, I'm on the final. I have the graphic designer. She redesigned all of the icons. I have the other graphic designer who redesigned all the card frames. Now these cards feel official, and that was like the 5th version I got from the game crafter.
Yeah, and those are not they're not super expensive, but they're not cheap either.
You can get expedited shipping if you want them to prioritize it, but it basically doubles the cost of the order.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Game crafters are really, really cool. I get because they do like I don't know how well they actually do when they actually publish your game because they just put it on their website. But they're really good for like making prototypes, like the final ish prototype, to get out there so it looks nice. Uh, so I really like them as a company and as like an asset because it's good. I don't know about the final games being on GameCraft or so much, but
When I was at Gen Con, they had a booth at the convention for
mhm.
Game Crafter, and the one of the people who was working there called it the candy store because they had big totes of all
Oh
these tokens
yeah,
and meeples, and I'm like, oh, that's so suiting because I can just get tokens for my game here. This is
yep.
perfect.
I wish they did like a pick a brick like for Lego where you just go and you're like pick. I want these things. I can put it in a jar and you're just gonna weigh the jar, and that's how much I pay.
Right.
So that would have been amazing. But yeah, no, I like them. They're great. I've talked to them a couple times. They're really friendly people too. So, but yeah, no, that's awesome. So, go moving on to other things, just to have people get to know you a little bit better. What is your favorite game?
Oh god. Um,
They're gonna judge you on this. No, I'm
if I
kidding.
had it's going to be an Ascension, but
Okay.
there's a specific version of Ascension, and if I had to pick one of the recent games that Justin's come out with, I'd probably say Ascension Delirium,
Okay.
because that one involved like almost like an auction mechanic where
Yep.
there were certain cards and you could like wager insight to figure out if you wanted to activate the ability of the card. There was a dice rolling mechanic, and my wife is a super fan of rolling the dice in that game. She always hits like a 5 or 6. She was really good at that.
Yeah, I always get one.
But yeah, I'd have to say my favorite would be Ascension Delirium.
So then, what's your favorite strategy in that game?
Mechana.
Yes,
Mechana,
that there
it's
was only one correct answer, and you did it. So congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, I play constructs and I just
Yeah,
value out with construct play.
yeah, that can get crazy too, especially if you don't get the cards to wipe them out. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna kill you now.
Yeah, it's so dependent on like if the monster that like one of the like the corrosive spider, I think will
Yeah,
kill a construct when it's defeated. And if somebody can't, have a monster come out and you go uninterrupted, you can just steamroll.
yep. You're like, I get all the stars. Oh, plus they're worth. Some of them are just worth what you pay too, which is amazing too.
That yeah, the
So
conversion, if a 5 cost construct usually gives you 5 honor. If it's a 5 cost lifebound card, it might give you 2 or 3 honor.
yeah, super good. Yes, correct answer.
Thank you.
But yeah, no, so basically it sounds like you're really into the deck building thing, so you wanted to make a really great deck building game. But your deck building game has more mechanics to it than just deck building. Um, I'm really interested in that monster that's in the middle. I think I saw on the Kickstarter campaign you might be different monsters available at different points.
At the moment, we have one.
Right.
There is a reward tier. There you can get an STL file and you can print and play your own secondary monster.
Okay.
We have like a prototype render of the second monster we're working on, but in the long run, what I would love to have is like little box expansions of a monster, and then it'll alter your game. Maybe
Yes.
this monster is more armored, or maybe it deals different types of wounds to you, or it has different negative effects, and that will alter the way the game flows depending on which one you play.
Yeah, I think that'll be really, really cool to have that out there. Um, and the game itself had two tiers to it, at a $50 and a $70 tier. So with the $50 tier, you get the base game, right?
The $55, yeah.
Oh, $55. I'm sorry.
No,
$55,
you're
you get the
good.
base game. And then the $70 tier, what did that have in it?
The $70 tier is if you want the second monster in STL print and play
Oh,
file.
that's right. Okay.
And then there is an extra tier. It's the $300 tier if you wanted your likeness in a card, in like a promo card. I have like a whole notes document on my phone of potential mechanics for future cards.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
I wanted to be able to implement those designs, and if players were really interested in getting like a tribute either to themselves or someone they know with their permission, they could get that in a future card.
That's always cool to be like, hey, I'm in this game.
I took a note out of Justin's book when he released Ascension Tactics. He had the same features in that Kickstarter.
There's also the cold-blooded card expansion that comes with both tiers, right? And that's just a Kickstarter exclusive.
Yes, yes, those are cold-blooded because all of those cards are reptiles or amphibians in some
Okay.
way, and they're a cycle of cards that exist in every district, and they all have the same mechanic called nonpartisan. So they might sway their allegiance if you when you play them. They're a cycle of one cost cards that do a lot for their cost. The Merchant's Row version generates you 3 coin and only costs one. That's really above the curve. So its downside is you have to give that card to one of your opponents when your turn's over.
Okay.
So they can have access to it too.
That's a pretty good dilemma too to have. Like, do I want to use this now, or because I'm going to give it to someone else, or do I just want to use it for? If they use it for movement, do they keep it?
Yes.
Okay, so then I'm like, maybe I don't want to right now. Maybe it'll be a movement card.
Bank it off until another turn.
Yeah, because you might be like, hey, I'm going to wait until I can do something big, and then sure, you can have this card now.
Oh, a small little detail. I was gonna segue back to the miniature for a sec. I actually have I have a background in ZBrush. I've been sculpting in ZBrush for the last 6 years. So that miniature is actually one of my creations.
Oh, that's really cool. So, how long did that take you?
It's hard to answer that. Like I can sculpt the miniature as if it was just something I was making in ZBrush, and then cutting it into pieces and making sure it's castable for production is a whole nother story.
Yeah, how'd that process go?
We're working with Boda Games for our manufacturing.
Oh, okay.
And they have a system where they can rubber cast molds. They either do metal injection or rubber cast, and we have a little bit more flexibility with the details if we do rubber molding. So I have the miniature in all the separate pieces, and they're gonna cast each individual one and then assemble it together, so it's just ready in the box.
Oh, that'll be cool. Was it did it add a little cost for them to assemble it, or
I'm still working out the details in that. Yeah. I'm pretty sure they know they're doing it. I've been getting quotes from them the last few weeks on like getting a certain amount of units produced. So I'm gonna probably have to cross that bridge when I get to it.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so it's gonna be really fun to see this game come out. It's going to be really fun to see. Well, I would really want to interview you later on after you've completed the whole cycle and get the game out and everything, and then talk about all the fun stuff that happens after Kickstarter.
Oh yeah, making sure that all the artwork for all the custom cards are made. I'm finishing the second monster and getting that shipped off to people. And hopefully we're getting this out by April or May, if production, works in our favor.
Yeah, that's pretty quick time frame for that, and it's the game itself is not very expensive. It's a good price for the game, so I really appreciate that too. Because all those Kickstarters now they're like $350, and you'll get a crate of miniatures, but the game itself,
super Gloomhaven.
Super Gloomhaven. Yeah, that's like 100 pounds of cardboard.
Oh my god.
So, yeah, but yeah, so. Let's go ahead and go over. What do you give like a final pitch for your game here?
I'd say if you were someone who's interested in a deck builder with a little more complexity, maybe a deck builder that has different archetypes for decks, like maybe you're an aggro deck or a control deck or a mid-range deck, or if you just like having a really big miniature in your box, I think my game will be in your favor.
Yeah, and like I said, definitely go and have the link down below there. Go ahead and check out the Kickstarter. You watch the video on there. There's a little section down there that shows you how the game flows and how it's played. And really take a good look at this. I love the art on it. I love the idea on it. I love deck building games, and I like the fact that I can not have to deal with not being able to get the faction I want. So that's going to be a big bonus for me. But yes, so, well, thank you, Mark, for being on the show. I really look forward to seeing you in the future, and I really look forward to seeing how this campaign works and the game itself.
Thank you for having me on. It was fantastic talking to you both.
Okay. So I hope you guys all have a good night and enjoyed the interview. Like I said, check this game out.